It's to 2 Kings chapter 1. 2 Kings chapter 1. When you find your place, if you go ahead and stand this evening. Excuse me. 2 Kings chapter 1. I'm going to start reading in verse 1. I'll warn you, I normally try not to start off with a large amount. I am going to this evening read 1 through 15, unless somewhere in there I completely fumble over my tongue, and then we'll get to the rest of it as we go through the message. But starting in 2 Kings chapter 1, starting at verse 1, it says, Then Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab, and Ahaziah fell down through the lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria, and was sick. And he sent messengers, and said unto them, Go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease. But the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say unto them, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that ye go to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore, thus saith the Lord, Thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And Elijah departed. And when the messengers turned back unto him, he said unto them, Why are ye now turned back? And they said unto him, There came a man up to meet us, and said unto us, Go turn again unto the king that sent you, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that thou sendest to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And he said unto them, What manner of man was he which came up to meet you, and told you these words? And they answered, He was an hairy man, and girt with a girdle of leather about his loins, and he saith, It is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 and his 50, and he went up to him, and behold, he sat on the top of a hill, and spake unto him, Thou man of God, the king hath said, Come down. And Elijah answered and said unto the captain of 50, If I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Again he sent unto him another captain of 50 and his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus hath the king said, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto them, If I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And he sent again a captain of 35, turning pages and messing myself up. And he came and he sent again a captain of the third 50 and his 50. And the third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees. Behold, Elijah I'm going to start this verse again. I'm hitting that point where I'm fumbling on my tongue. And he sent again a captain of the third 50 with his 50. And the third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah, and besought him, and said unto him, O man of God, I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 thy servants be precious in thy sight. Behold, there came fire down from heaven, and burnt up the two captains of the former 50 with their 50s. Therefore let my life now be precious in thy sight. And the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, Go down now with him, be not afraid of him. And he arose and went down with him unto the king. We'll stop there and let's have a word of prayer, and we'll get started this evening. You can go ahead and be seated. Last week we took a break from the series that we've been doing on the word go in the Bible. But this week we're going to get kind of back onto it. It's, like I said, it's not often, or try not to start off with such a large portion. But to grasp a little bit of what's going on here, I think it's important. The king is not well. He must be doing really bad because he thinks that he's going to die from this, but wants to know. So he does what a lot of people do. He reaches out to some higher being than himself. He doesn't know who that is. Talks about that there's no God in Israel. He doesn't know who that higher being is, but he knows there must be something bigger than him. So he just tells his servants, Go find the prophet of the closest God. And in essence, that's what he's saying. Go to Beelzebub, go to Ekron. You're going to go see their God and see what he says, which we see people often do. That they find themselves in in some sort of trouble, so they start seeking after some sort of God. They don't know who he is, they don't know anything about him, but they realize there must be something that's bigger than they are, and they want whoever that is to help them. That's in essence what the king is doing here. But while the king's servants are on their way, God interjects Elijah. A lot of interesting things go on. He sends them back with the message, yes, you're going to die because you sought after the wrong God. The king obviously doesn't like that message, so he wants to talk to the man who said it. He sends a man and 50 soldiers to go get the man of God who... I love the way Elijah does it. They say, man of God, come back with us. And he says, if I am a man of God, you're going to die right now. And fire comes down from heaven, and they do. So the king tries again. I'll send another man and his 50. Same result. Third time, the king sends 50. And this time, this captain of 50 has gotten smart. He's seen what has happened to the other 102 men before him. And he must have figured out that if I approach this same way that they all approached, I'm going to have the same fate that they all had. So this captain, rather than coming to Elijah and saying, man of God, come down, he comes to the man of God and falls on his face and begs his life. He doesn't even beg that Elijah comes with him. He falls down and begs for his life to be saved. And Elijah hears from God that it's okay, and he goes. A lot going on through these 15 verses, but being what our series is on, I'm going to focus on go in this passage. And here's kind of the focus that I want us to see as we go through this message this evening. Verse 3, the angel of the Lord comes to Elijah and tells him, arise and go. This is right at the beginning of this, that the king has sent his servants to go to the god of Ekron, and God tells Elijah, I want you to arise and go. Now, we don't know what exactly Elijah was doing before this point. Based on what we know about his ministry, I find it hard to believe that he was just sitting around, with his feet up, kicked back. I'm sure he was busy with something, but God comes and tells him it's time for some action. It's time for something to happen. And here's why this is so important for us tonight, because for the Christian today, for you and I, it's time for some action. It's time for something to be done. On Sunday, Brother Begum had said that he would have never imagined how fast our country has declined. I'm a relatively young man. I say relatively now because working with teens, they remind me on a really regular basis that I'm not as young as I think I am. This summer, Alex Sundquist asked me to run, I've told somebody this, asked me to run a 5K with him, and it wasn't the first that I've run. I can run 3 miles, that's not a problem, but it wasn't until after I had agreed, and more than that, it wasn't until after he had convinced me to pay for us both to do this, that he told me that he runs a 5K in 18 minutes. Well, that's really fast, but I was determined I'm going to keep up with this 17-year-old kid. We got about a mile into it, and I was dying and decided I was going to run my pace, and backed off and finished. And as I crossed the finish line, here was Alex at the finish line to meet me with these encouraging words. That's not a bad time for a guy your age. No joke. That is what he said. What a blessing that was. He's standing there looking at the clock and me finishing, saying, not a bad time for a guy your age. So I've changed my opinion of myself from young man to relatively young man. But even as a relatively young man, the change that's happened in our country in my lifetime is astounding. Even if we were to set aside political things and setting aside the financial issues and all those sorts of things that our country has got itself into, just looking at the moral decline of our country in just that short amount of time is amazing. Things that even as recently as 5 or 10 years ago that were thought of as vile and wicked by the world, not by churches, but things that were thought of as wicked by worldly people are now accepted not only in our country as a whole, but also in a whole lot of churches. The spiritual decline of our nation in my lifetime has just been insane. And if you listen, you'll hear Christians around the nation upset and complaining about the moral decay of our country. But the problem is this, that God's been saying to them, arise and go, as he told Elijah. But there are far too many Christians that are content to sit and stay instead of arise and go. And it's easy for us to say Christians as a whole, because then we can blame it on someone else. But I guarantee that's true of every one of us as well. I'm confident that every one of us in here could think of a time that God has led us to go and we've said no. Maybe it's being led to witness and we've come up with some sort of excuse on why we can't. The person is too big, too scary. I wouldn't know what to say. What if they get mad? What's on the other side of that door? That's always mine. What's on the other side of that door? You go to knock a door. I have no idea what's going to be on the other side. What's on the other side of that door? What if they have a big dog? Trust me. I've thought of all these things. I know this because I've thought of these things myself. We come up with reasons why we can't. Or maybe it's God leading us to help in some ministry, and we come up in our minds with, I'm going to say reasons, but it's really just excuses, why we couldn't do it. Yeah. Why I wouldn't be a good fit for that ministry. I've heard people say that. Well, being asked to do something, well, I wouldn't really be a good fit for that ministry, but that person would. It's true of all of us. But here's the idea here, that when God says it's time to arise and go, that we ought to just get up and go. When God says it's time to go, that we need to do it. In this passage, I see 3 details that God takes care of when he tells us arise and go. And I find it interesting. This is in reference to Elijah, but these 3 things are kind of 3 of the biggest excuses that people use when God tells them to arise and go. And God is telling Elijah, I'll take care of these for you. When God directs us to get up and go, to arise and go, he'll handle them. When God says it's time to go, number 1, he gives us the message. You look at verse 3, it says, But the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, look at this, and say unto them. And it goes on with what the exact message is, but key in on that phrase, and say unto them. You get what's happening here? God's telling Elijah to go, and he says, this is what you're going to say. These are the words I want you to give. He doesn't tell Elijah, I want you to arise and go, and then once you get there, find something intelligent to say to him. No, he gives the exact message. You notice when Elijah goes to him, it's word for word what he wants him to say. I would venture to say the number 1 excuse used by people on why they can't go witnessing, for an example, is that they wouldn't know what to say. And if it isn't the number 1, for sure it's the number 1 that I've heard people give. That if they went out door knocking and someone actually opened the door, the whole time they're knocking, they're praying, please don't answer, please don't answer, please don't answer. If someone actually opened the door, that they would just stand there, looking like a fool because they'd have no idea what to say. I'm just going to I'll be blunt. That's a really lame excuse. It really is. First of all, if you came to visitation, do you really think pastor is going to be mean enough to say, you have no idea what you're doing? All right, go by yourself. No, he's going to be, pair you up with someone who knows what they're doing. More than that, do you really want to admit you can't learn or won't learn how to do it? It's not hard to learn to say, hello, my name is Caleb Mckenzie. I'm from Bible Baptist Church. Here's an invitation. That's not hard. Right. That's not real difficult. And if you want to learn to say more, pastor teaches every Sunday night a class on how to lead someone to the Lord. So the excuse of I wouldn't know what to say is a really lame excuse. And on top of all that, do you think that God couldn't give you the words? Let's think this through for just a minute. The God who created you, he made your mouth and your brain. Therefore, I'm pretty confident that he can tell your brain what needs to come out of your mouth. It makes sense to me, and I'm not trying to oversimplify this, and I apologize if that's the way it's coming across, because I do believe that we should learn how to lead someone to the Lord, and I recognize that it is a legitimate worry for many, that they will come to a person and simply have have no idea what they should say. There are some people, my brother is one of those, who can talk to anyone. It's always amazed me about Bo that he can find a total stranger and be in a conversation with them about anything. A few weeks back, I went up to help Bo, and I had run to the store for a few parts, and I came back, and Bo was talking to someone, and the way their conversation was going, I was sure it was someone that Bo's known for years. I mean, they're talking about everything, their kids, and I mean, it sounded like someone he knew for years that he was catching up with. And the person finally leaves, and I asked Bo, was that someone you knew before, maybe one of your contractors? And Bo's response was something along the lines of, no, I just met him. But he was talking to him like he's known him for 20 years. And Bo's always kind of had that ability. I don't think he's ever said, I don't know what to say to that person. He just he just has an ability to talk to anyone about anything and sound relatively intelligent doing it. I, on the other hand, am not that way. I will admit I've always been jealous of my brother about that because I can't. I try. It's a great way to network with people and to get to know people in your area. It's a great way to build relationships with people. So I do try. But it always ends up in an awkward conversation because I just don't know what to say. You can ask my wife. We've been married for 10 years. I know her pretty well, and yet if you asked her, she would agree with this, that I still tell her if she wants a conversation between her and I, she better carry it because I'm going to run out of things to say in about 30 seconds, and I just don't know what to say. I think that's why I like texting better than talking on the phone, because I have like 2 minutes between each sentence that I can think through something intelligent to say. It gives me time to be clever. I don't have to think on the spot. So trust me, I get that it's a legitimate problem, the whole I don't know what to say. But I also get that when God leads me to go, I don't have to come up with what to say because He tells me. A few years back, I was talking with a coworker, and he was asking me about what I do at the church. And so, go through a whole list of different things that I do. And here's what he focused on. He focused on that I teach the teens every Sunday and I preach every Wednesday night. And he asked, how do you come up with enough stuff to talk about without repeating yourself over and over and over? And I had to be totally honest with him. I don't know. Amen. Because we've passed my limited knowledge a long time ago. I just have to trust that God's going to give me what to say. And I'm really not trying to be flippant about it. It's simply that I just have to trust that God's going to give me what to say. He's telling me to go. He'll give me the words. And because I know that He's told me to go, I know He will. When God says go, He gives the message. When God says go, number 2, He directs. Look at verse 3 again. But the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers, the king of Samaria, and say unto them, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that ye go to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? He directs Elijah in 2 ways in this verse. He first of all directs him to whom he is to go. You think about this for just a minute. Who Elijah goes to give this message is very important, because this message that the king is on his bed and is going to die is going to do no good if given to the wrong person. If Elijah just went out and found anyone in the street and told them what the angel of the Lord told him to say, the king's in his bed, he's not doing well, he's going to die there. Most people wouldn't be too affected by that. It's the king. There's going to be some effect on people as a whole. I understand that, but it wouldn't serve the same purpose as telling the messengers to the king. Elijah telling the correct person was important, and that could only happen if God directed him to that right person. It's not like they're walking down the street saying, Hi, we're the king's messengers. No, God directed him. At the same point, God directed him to where he should go. Had God just said, this is the message, I want you to give it to the messengers for the king, there could have been months between verses 4 and 5. It's not like he could pick up his cell phone and call the messengers of the king and say, hey, this is the message you're supposed to give him. He had to find them. Without God directing him, there would have been no telling where they're at. At best, he would have had some good guesses that, this is where they're coming from, this is where they're going. If they go the route I would go, they would be on this road. But finding them would be no easy task, and you're just, again, assuming they're taking the same route you would. This working would require God directing you to the right place, which also is a very common excuse given, that I wouldn't know where or who to go to. It's a real question because God has a perfect place for you that wouldn't be a perfect place for me. Earlier this year, I preached for Brother Sprague, where he is, it's all farmers and cowboys. I was told by one of their members I was weird because I was in a suit and dress shoes, not Wranglers and cowboy boots. I mean, it was odd to them. It's a perfect place for Brother Sprague, not for me. God has people that would listen to you that would never listen to me. Family or loved ones, even just people that God has prepared for you that would open up and would listen to you, but would completely shut me down. I've told this story before, but it's one of those. It's one of those that kind of just means a lot to me. There was a guy that I worked with when I was 16, and right off the bat, I told the guys I was a Christian. I told them where I went to church. I invited them to come to church with me, and there was one guy to me every single day at work for the fact that I was a Christian. He was quite a bit older than I was. I was the new guy, and it was just the easy target. It's going to sound funny after saying, he was a really nice guy, and as odd as it seems, I really liked Neil. But every single day, he mocked that I went to church. Every Monday, the entire morning, every Monday morning, was spent talking about, he would go on and on about all of the stupid things that he had done over the weekend, and then he would mockingly ask, how was your weekend in church? Which, as a 16-year-old kid, to me, that was, hey, door open. I started telling him, hey, this is what the message was. I just started preaching at him. But every time Neil shut me down, didn't want to hear about God. His thing was always, I don't have time for religion. He would always tell me, you heard everything I did this weekend. When do I have time for religion? We've got all of this other stuff going on. Even after I stopped working there, Neil and I kind of kept in contact for a while. And even with not working with him, every time I saw him, he mocked the fact that I went to church. I lost contact with him for, a few years when he moved to Arizona. One day I got a call from a number I didn't know, and when I answered, it was Neil. I hadn't heard from him in probably 5 years, and it's Neil calling me up. And here's what he told me. He said, someone from a Baptist church in my town knocked on my door a couple weeks back and led me to the Lord. And now I have it written down. I'm trying to see where it is because I'm trying to remember how he had worded it. But in essence, that now I've been saved, baptized, and that's what it was. I'm spending every weekend in church like you. A man who had shut me down for years wouldn't let me talk about it, but God brought someone along that he would listen to. And there are people like that for you that I couldn't talk to, that wouldn't hear it from me, but you can. The excuse of I wouldn't know where to go or who to talk to, that's okay, because God will show you. He's going to open those doors. When God says go, he gives the message, and when God says go, he directs. And lastly tonight, when God says go, there's nothing to fear. The verse that we ended with, verse 15, says, and the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, go down with him, be not afraid of him. And he arose and went down with him unto the king. Now, I have to admit, I read this and find a little humor. Because the angel of the Lord is talking to Elijah, the man who just called down fire from heaven that consumed 102 men. 2 groups of 50 plus their captains. This is Elijah, who currently has another captain and another 50 men at his doorstep, in essence, cowering in fear of him. And understandably, since what happened to their counterparts that had come earlier, but God tells Elijah, you don't need to fear. You can go ahead and go with them. But you think about it, the message that he's giving isn't exactly going to be one that the king is fond of, which is why he's sent soldiers repeatedly saying, come down. No one likes being told that they're going to die, especially when they've sent for, when they've sent to try and appease God so that they can live. And Elijah's going to come and tell him, number one, you're wrong, or you went to the wrong God, and number two, you're going to die for it. This is not going to be a popular message. Now, this is not going to be something that's going to make the king real happy. And you're saying it to the king who could have your life. But here's what's being said by God, that I told you to go, and because of that, there's no reason to fear. You don't have to worry about the king. As I was preparing for this, it got me thinking about, as we've been going through this series, and we've seen this kind of over and over. I'm not going to re-preach it at all, but it got me thinking of what we've seen through this series. When we go for God, here's a couple of them that we've seen. When we go for God, He's our buckler, He's our shield, He's our strong tower, He's our defense, He's our offense, He's fighting for us, and we could go on and on and on, but I think we get the point. There's no reason to fear, because when God tells us to go, He'll take care of us. When God tells us to go, He's going to take care of us. That again is one of the main excuses people give on why they can't go for God, is that they are simply afraid. And again, I get that. I've said it before. People terrify me. Getting up here is a scary thing. Whether I'm singing or whether I'm preaching, it's a scary thing. The reason I write down my notes when I get up here is because otherwise, I get so nervous. If I don't have notes to look at, I forget to breathe. I'm not joking. When I get asked last minute to stand up here and say something, watch near the end. You'll all be looking at this next time. I start talking faster and quieter. It's because I'm running out of air. I'm not joking. A few years back, we went to the Home Missions Conference in Yakima, and Pastor Brown is kind of known for this. As services were starting, he walked up to me and said, "Come with me." And walked me to the front of the church. He led me to the platform and told me, "Sit here." And then he walked away and went and started talking to people, leaving me sitting on the platform as everything's starting by myself. I'm sitting up here not knowing what I was up there for. At some point, he comes up and says, "This is Caleb Mckenzie. He's going to pray to start the service." And I thought, okay, pray. I can do this. As I step to the pulpit and he steps away, he says, "And say something about what you're doing with your dad and Puyol up there." Which means, spur of the cuff, here I go. I have no idea, what, I couldn't tell you 10 minutes after I said it, what I said after I got down from there. Got done praying, and I came down feeling like I was gasping for air. I mean, it's just like, man, I feel like I'm dying. And I come down and I tell my wife that, and she goes, "Well, it's no surprise. You didn't stop for a breath the entire time you were up there." It scares me. I understand that. Going door knocking scares me. I mentioned that with the whole, you have no idea what's going to happen, what's behind that door. It's kind of, I don't know, we get scared of it. Nothing ever terrible has happened to me door knocking. I think the worst for me has been I've been yelled at a couple of times. I did have one time, we were with the teens, it was great, that I knocked on a door and it was just a screen door, and all you could hear was a bark on the other side, and a German Shepherd jumped through the screen. And I punched it in the nose and then walked away, decided I didn't need to leave a track telling them where the person came from that punched their dog. But it scares us. It scares us. Most people, the unknown of where God might be leading them, it scares them. But if God is the one saying, "Arise and go," I have no reason to fear. You have no reason to fear, because He'll take care of you. I have no reason to fear, because He'll take care of me. As I was preparing, it made me think of the hymn, "God will take care of you." God will take care of you through every day or all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you. I don't have to worry about anything. If God's the one leading me to go, He'll take care of it. I boiled the entire message down to this really simple idea. For every one of us in here, God has said, "Arise and go." He leads us all in different ways. For some, that's arise and go door knocking. For others, that's arise and go serve in a ministry at the church. For others still, it may be arise and go into full-time ministry. Stop making excuses and go. This world doesn't need more Christians who will sit on the sidelines complaining about the moral decay and waiting for someone else to go. What the world around us needs is some Christians who will obey God and say, all right, God, I'll arise and go for you. Let's pray.